Now, the Fed was one of the regulators that had some of those consumer responsibilities. We actually think that they're better off focusing on issues of broad systemic risk. And we have just one agency that's focused on the consumer protection side. But is the Fed getting too powerful? President Obama, if you look at what we've proposed, we are not so much expanding the Fed's power. As we are focusing what the Fed needs to do to prevent the kinds of crises that are happening again. Another good example is the issue of resolution authority. I think it wasn't that long ago where everybody was properly outraged about AIG. And the enormous amounts of money the taxpayers had to put into AIG in order to prevent it from dragging the entire financial system down with it. Had we had the kinds of resolution authority, the kinds of laws that were in place that would allow an orderly winding down of AIG. Then potentially taxpayers could have saved a huge amount of money. We want that power to be available so that taxpayers aren't on the hook. All right. Major Garrett? Where's Major? Right here, sir. In your opening remarks, sir, you said about Iran that you were appalled and outraged. What took you so long to say those words? President Obama, I don't think that's accurate. Track what I've been saying. Right after the election, I said that we had profound concerns about the nature of the election. But that it was not up to us to determine what the outcome was. As soon as violence broke out, in fact, in anticipation of potential violence, we were very clear in saying that violence was unacceptable, that was not how governments operate with respect to their people. So we've been entirely consistent, Major, in terms of how we've approached this. My role has been to say the United States is not going to be a foil for the Iranian government. To try to blame what's happening on the streets of Tehran on the CIA or on the White House. That this is an issue that is led by and given voice to the frustrations of the Iranian people. And so we've been very consistent the first day, and we're going to continue to be consistent in saying this is not an issue about the United States, this is about an issue of the Iranian people. What we've also been consistent about is saying that there are some universal principles, including freedom of assembly and freedom of speech, making sure that governments are not using coercion and violence and repression in terms of how they interact with peaceful demonstrators. And we have been speaking out very clearly about that fact. Q. Are Iranian diplomats still welcome at the embassy on the 4th of July, sir? President Obama, well, I think as you're aware, Major. We don't have formal diplomatic relations with Iran. I think that we have said that if Iran chooses a path that abides by international norms and principles, then we are interested in healing some of the wounds of 30 years. In terms of U.S. Iranian relations. But that is a choice that the Iranians are going to have to make. Q. But the offer still stands? President Obama, that's a choice the Iranians are going to have to make. David Jackson. Q. Thank you, Mr. President. Two of the key players in the insurance industry, America's health insurance plans and Blue Cross Blue Shield. Sent a letter to the Senate this morning saying that a government health insurance plan would dismantle private insurers. Why are they wrong? And secondly, this public plan, is this non-negotiable? Would you sign a health care bill without it? President Obama, well, let's talk first of all about health care reform more broadly. I think in this debate there's been some notion that if we just stand pat we're okay. And that's just not true. You know, there are polls out that show that 70 or 80% of Americans are satisfied with the health insurance that they currently have. The only problem is that premiums have been doubling every 9 years, going up 3 times faster than wages. The U. S. government is not going to be able to afford Medicare and Medicaid on its current trajectory. Businesses are having to make very tough decisions about whether we drop coverage or we further restrict coverage. So the notion that somehow we can just keep on doing what we're doing and that's okay, that's just not true. We have a long-standing critical problem in our healthcare system that is pulling down our economy. It's burdening families, it's burdening businesses, and it is the primary driver of our federal deficits. All right? So if we start from the premise that the status quo is unacceptable, then that means we're going to have to bring about some serious changes. What I've said is, our top priority has to be to control costs. And that means not just tinkering around the edges. It doesn't mean just lopping off reimbursements for doctors. In any given year, because we're trying to fix our budget. It means that we look at the kinds of incentives that exist, what our delivery system is like. Why it is that some communities are spending 30% less than other communities but getting better healthcare outcomes. And figuring out how can we make sure that everybody is benefiting from. Lower costs and better quality by improving practices. It means health IT. It means prevention. So all these things are the starting point, I think, for reform. And I've said very clearly, if any bill arrives from Congress that is not controlling costs, that's not a bill I can support. It's going to have to control costs. It's going to. Have to be paid for. So there's been a lot of talk about, well, $1 trillion price tag. What I've said is, if we're going to spend that much money, then it's going to be largely funded. Through reallocating dollars that are already in the healthcare system but aren't being spent well. If we're spending $177 billion over 10 years to subsidize insurance companies under Medicare Advantage, when there's no showing that people are healthier using that, program than the regular Medicare program. Well, that's not a good deal for taxpayers. And we're going to take that money and we're going to use it to provide better care at a cheaper cost to the American people. So that's point number one. Number two, while we are in the process of dealing with the cost issue, I think it's also wise policy and the right thing to do to start providing coverage for people who don't. Have health insurance or are underinsured, are paying a lot of money for high deductibles. I get letters 2-3 letters a day that I read of families who don't have health insurance. Are going bankrupt, are on the brink of losing their insurance, have deductibles that are so high that even with insurance they end up with $50,000, $100,000 worth of debt, are at risk of losing their homes. And that has to be part of reform, making sure that even if you've got health insurance now, you are not worried that when you lose your job or your employer decides to change policies that somehow you're going to be out of luck. I think about the woman who was in Wisconsin that I was with, who introduced me up in Green Bay, 36 years old. Double mastectomy, breast cancer has now moved to her bones and she's got 2 little kids, a husband with a job. They had health insurance, but they're still $50,000 in debt, and she's thinking, my main legacy, if I don't survive this thing, is going to be leaving $100,000 worth of debt. So those are the things that I'm prioritizing. Now, the public plan I think is an important tool to discipline insurance companies. What we've said is, under our proposal, let's have a system the same way that federal employees do. Same way that members of Congress do, where we call it an exchange. Or you can call it a marketplace where essentially you've got a whole bunch of different plans. If you like your plan and you like your doctor, you won't have to do a thing. You keep your plan. You keep your doctor. If your employer is providing you good health insurance. Terrific, we're not going to mess with it. But if you're a small business person, if the insurance that's being offered is something you can't afford, if you want to shop for a better price, then you can go to this exchange. This marketplace, and you can look, okay, this is how much this plan costs. This is how much that plan costs, this is what the coverage is like, this is what fits for my family. As one of those options, for us to be able to say, here's a public option that's not profit driven. That can keep down administrative costs and that provides you good. Quality care for a reasonable price as one of the options for you to choose. I think that makes sense. Q, won't that drive private insurers out of business? President Obama, why would it drive private insurers out of business? If private insurers say that the marketplace provides the best quality health care, if they tell us that they're offering a good deal, then why is it that the government, which they say can't run anything,